Thank you. I mean, as you know, I am Richard Ratcliffe. I'm the husband of Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe, um, now essentially a retired campaigner, which is a lovely place to be. Um, I mean, why am I here? I'm here partly, I think, as a point of hope. Um, we had a very long struggle for years. I don't think we ever thought it would last for years, but it went on, and we had lovely euphoric moments like this where we'd have lots of people at events and we'd come away all elated and hopeful and just knowing that it was going to happen. And then we'd have really dark times where it just, we'd be racking our brains as to what to do, and it felt like the media didn't care, and it felt like stories would disappear and sit with the lawyers, scratching our heads, not knowing what could do. And stories like Nazanin's, stories like Julian's are quite simple. And you can struggle as a family to work out what's blocking it, what to do. It was really important for me and for Nazanin to be here, just to say at a simple level, it does end one day. It doesn't end easily, it doesn't end without lots of honest people caring and seeing and writing and shouting and all the things that everyone in this room is doing and people around the world are doing. But it does end. I remember coming along there was an event outside Parliament where we made a chain around, it was a really beautiful event. And there was, I think it was Sky TV coming up, and they asked me, what are you doing here? And they meant it not in a hostile way, in a kind of we all exist in boxes, so Nazanin's story was in one box, and Julian's story was in another box, and one's over there and one's over here, and it's in some ways a good question, and part of my journey from being a sort of a middle-class accountant that did not come along to political events was discovering the connections between all sorts of injustices. And cases are different. None of them are the same. I don't mean to sort of elide it all. But, there is a way in which, at the human level, I don't know if anyone heard Stella on the radio over Christmas, but her describing the experience of going to visit Julian in prison and taking the boys and what that's like, trying to protect them from everything and to keep it human and normal, and also to protect Julian and to keep that connection to the outside world and that connection to still being a dad, and that there is life and colour outside those grey walls. Well, that was a very similar experience for Nazanin as well. It is an experience that transcends all sorts of prisons and prisoners and all sorts of injustice. So there's a way in which I know I felt for our family when we suddenly went down this rabbit hole and what we thought we knew went upside down. We really struggled with the fact that lots of friends felt it too dangerous to stay in touch and not so much in the UK, but in Iran, lots of friends did. And that kind of being a pariah and watching how your family's story and your family's humanity gets distorted, it's a lonely business. It's really important that we recognise each other's humanity, but we recognise the fact that, the importance of not being left alone it can't be understated. I think the other thing to say in terms of connections, I remember when, it's a point that Jeremy mentioned, just before he went off, the UN ruled in Nazanin's case that she had been arbitrarily detained, and that the UN demanded her release. And I couldn't get the UK to call for her release. I couldn't get the UK to acknowledge that UN ruling, and that was precisely because Julian had a ruling, and they didn't want to be called out as hypocrites. Of course, Iran would point to Julian's case and say, listen, you do it, we do it. Everyone can throw names at each other, but we all have difficult prisoners that we have to manage. And that way in which, the UK didn't want to be called hypocrites, but the hypocrisy of human rights, making them as something that's disposable for particular cases, does mean that we're all less safe, that there is a race to the bottom. And there's a way in which Julian's case very literally told for Nazanin and told for the safety of everyone in this room. That's not a freedom of speech issue. That's just the basics of whether rule of law matters anymore. The other thing to say, and this is just from our own personal experience, I don't think I ever knew when Nazanin will come home. I think I felt, and it's true with all campaigning, that, Jeremy made a very good point, that campaigning needs friends. The more friends you build, the greater it grows. It's a kind of a ripple that just, you keep throwing stones in the pond and it keeps rippling, and you hope the circles get big enough, and you don't know when big enough is. And I always felt that if enough people cared, the right people will care enough. That will be true. That was true in our case. It will be true in Julian's case. You don't know if it's tomorrow. You don't know if it's next week. You don't know if it's next year. You don't know if it's, ages away. And in some ways that's, living day to day. It's better not to look too far into the future. It's a long old slog, and you have to keep going. And I think the most important part of, you guys being here, this event, the solidarity that it represents, is exactly that point that Jeremy said about the cradling that you need as a family to come through with this. This is an experience of profound cruelty at some level. It is something that, I don't know how much Julian is ever aware of all the care that's outside. For Nazanin, dimly, so she'd be aware of some things, some not. Some things would get in, and he's actually not here anymore, but once we did a hunger strike in front of, which did two, one in front of the Foreign Office and one in front of the Iranian Embassy. The one in front of the Iranian Embassy, Jeremy actually came down and brought some coffee with him and said, "This is for Nazanin," just coffee. Now, it took a long time to get that coffee to Iran and to smuggle that coffee into, but we got that coffee into the prison. And for Nazanin and for all her cellmates, the fact that someone they knew from outside, an important person that they'd seen on television, had sent them coffee, and they would very occasionally sit in the yard and drink it, and it would just be a reminder that, of a connection to a world outside, a world of, normality. When we all live normal lives, for them in there, and that, there was colour beyond the grey walls. Part of what you guys do here with the colour of the carnival and everything else is a way of giving, if nothing else, stories for people to take to Julian, for him to know that, he won't know half of it, but he will know. I think also, and Nazanin's not here today. She's not here today partly because it's a bumpy journey back to normal afterwards. It's, I say, it's a rough old experience that we went through, incomparable to what Julian's been through in some ways. He'll get better, he'll get beyond it, but it won't be day one afterwards. It'll be forwards and backwards and so on. In that experience of cruelty, the importance of discovering that world of care, that world of support, that world of solidarity, that, at the end, lots of people kept battling and keep battling until he came home. It's almost like a sort of a photo album or a wedding of all those messages and support and solidarity. And it's a reminder that in the midst of all that cruelty, there's a world of kindness out there. There's a world that does believe in justice. And it's the world that's represented here today. So I'm honoured to be here with you all, and thank you for all you do.